All right, here we go. We're going to talk to one of the superstars in mixed martial arts, former Bellator lightweight champion. 3 times he's done it. Also a tournament champion, Michael Chandler. What up? How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Just living the dream, enjoying the quarantine life. Everyone's got a different quarantine scenario. Mine's been pretty good actually. So I'm just been enjoying it. Just staying in as good a shape as I possibly can without being in my normal training environment and taking it in stride.
Pretty good, actually, compared to like other people you're hearing, like other fighters or your neighbors. Is there something that stands out a little bit about why you're not necessarily enjoying your quarantine, but seeming to be, I guess, really, really chill about it?
Yeah, I actually am enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would. The the blessing and the curse of being a guy like me who kind of is just a hard charging, wanting to get stuff done every day. I wake up trying to get better and do, whether it be better physically, mentally, spiritually, better as a father, better as a husband, better as a businessman, better with things outside the cage, inside the cage. There's always something to be done. And the actual, inherent blessing about the entire world being shut down right now, or seemingly shut down except for essential things, really kind of puts things into perspective that A, you are not in control, which I know doesn't sit well with a lot of people, but I have come to grips with it. A, I am not in control, and B, I can just focus. It gives me another opportunity to just focus on what I can control and focus on keeping the main thing the main thing. The main thing for me is where am I physically, mentally, spiritually as a father and as a husband, and getting to spend a lot of time with my wife, a lot of time with my son has been a huge blessing. I, as a professional athlete, I obviously am set up for a time like this. I have 3 or 4 pieces of big cardio equipment in my garage. It has been pretty beautiful weather here in Nashville, so I've been able to put a lot of miles in on the road. I have some weights to be lifting. I got a TV out there with UFC Fight Pass and Bellator.com, Bellator app on it, where I can just watch thousands of hours of fights while I'm doing my cardio, and I can visualize and I can go into that mind gym every single day. So I've really just enjoyed. I've enjoyed this time because I have been kind of, I'm stuck just like everyone else is, but it's being stuck is a matter of perspective. And I think if you can have the right perspective during this time, you can be one of the ones who come out of this thing in a lot better state mentally and physically than when you went in.
Do you run with a mask?
No, I don't actually. I don't. And actually, I think if I had to say the one thing that has been, especially week 1 was like a ghost town. And it was, I feel like now week 4, week 5, we've kind of gotten used to it. We've also realized that although the coronavirus is a big deal, it's not, at least for me, and I could be wrong. I know a lot of people are going through, losing their jobs or their businesses shutting down or a lot of uncertainty or even maybe losing a loved one to the coronavirus. But for me, I haven't had a lot of that stuff happen. The only thing I've had to deal with is the uncertainty of my fight date and when it's going to happen. But the shining light, the glimmer of hope every single day for me is whenever I go on a walk, whether I'm walking with my wife and son, or I'm just going for a run, or I'm just going for my own walk to clear my head or just get some sunlight. Seeing people out was the highlight of my day. Giving people the salute, the nod, the what's up, the smile, the hi. Realizing that human beings were created for human interaction. We are created for relationship. And when you're cooped up in your house with your family, with your thoughts, with your your little bubble, it makes you feel a lot more trapped than if you go outside and take your walk and say hi to people and you see them living their lives during this quarantine, making the best of it. So I don't wear a mask. Yeah, I've actually never put on a mask, but if I ever had to travel, I probably would.
I couldn't agree more. I was walking the dog today, but some of these masks are very eccentric. Like some people look like they're rushing into a house that's on fire. So it's almost borderline, just one of those breathing apparatuses, I guess, that the firemen wear. I don't know what it's called. Or some even look like fighter jets. I'm like, come on, man. I thought it was something simple like you see at the hospital, or the last thing when you look up at your dentist and he's putting you out because he's got to take out some, a bad tooth or something. But people are getting eccentric with it. And if you go online, people are like really, first it was like, this is what you can do with a bandana. And now people are selling like, hey, are you a Panthers fan? Hey, are you a Vegas Golden Knights, man, look what we got for you. You know,
I think people are starting to see that. I think people. I mean, unfortunately, and I don't know. I'm not here to judge anybody for their their thoughts or what they want to do. But yeah, unfortunately, I think we're heading that direction where you're going to see a lot more people out in public with masks, like moving forward forever. Which I'm not a huge fan of, but the companies are seeing some value. Seeing some value, and they're probably going to start throwing logos and all kinds of cool stuff on there.
So Chandler, I know a lot of people are going to be watching this interview. They're going to be like, yeah. Enough with the chit chat, you two. Let's get to the meat and potatoes. Later this year, will Chandler still be a Bellator fighter, or how are you approaching this free agency? You're going to be this free agency status that you're going to reach, where it looks like you're going to really test it this time. Like before, I think the organization has kind of said, no, you're not going anywhere, and they stepped up and gave you what you want. But this time, it looks like it's going a further step. So, what are you thinking? You mentioned Fight Pass earlier. You mentioned Bellator and seeing the fights that they have to offer. But what are you feeling?
For me, right now is an interesting time too, because we're in this quarantine and there's not a lot of stuff going on. I'm not able to go down to Florida and train with those guys. I'm here spending a lot of times. I mean, I'm having conversations with my manager daily. A lot of it is revolved around my career. A lot of it is revolved around just the general landscape of mixed martial arts. Obviously, we are seeing Bellator's approach to the coronavirus, the UFC's approach, ONE FC's approach, PFL just suspended the rest of the year. We're looking at and seeing how these different organizations are making their decisions, and that's really what all of this is based on. Everyone needs to make, and I empower people to make the best decision for themselves. I want Bellator to make the best decision for themselves. If them not giving me, the offer that we kind of hinted at, if they need to make that best decision for themselves, then they make that best decision for themselves and for their business and for their, the livelihood and they're moving forward, the forward thinking of their organization. And I have to do the same thing. I've made, I've pulled no punches, and I've made it no secret that I always have tried to make the best decision for myself and my family. I am accountable to two people here on earth, and that is my wife and my son. And I vowed to take care of both of them and love them and support them and serve them until my last dying breath. And, here I am at a crossroads again. You mentioned it. I have never been a free agent. I have always come to terms with Bellator, and I don't think this is any different necessarily. The timing or timeline may be different, but I think it's no secret that I'm a cornerstone of the Bellator organization, and the success of my career and the platform that I've built largely has been hinged on Bellator, the promotion, and Bjorn Rebney starting it, and then Scott Coker taking over, and Viacom and Spike and Kevin Kay and Frank Takey and all these guys that I've had a phenomenal relationship with. Now just here we are, and I get to go out and prove once and for all. I mean, if you look at my last fight in front of 35,000 people across the world in Japan, it was one of the biggest stages of my career, and went out there and knocked it out in the first round. And I feel the best I've ever been. Scott Coker alluded to the fact that I'm not 21 anymore. Well, I also wasn't a fighter at 21. I didn't start fighting until I was 22, 23 years old. And I feel like I've done nothing but get better since, I turned even 30, So now as a mature man, as a father, as a husband, as a man who's got a lot more to fight for now than I did back in the day. And man, I feel like everything is lining itself up for me to make, the right decision for my family, whether it be, as I've said, and I've been very vocal about it, I would love to retire a Bellator fighter. I would love to be the guy who started with the organization in 2010, 2011, and, retires from the organization however many years from now. But if that's not in the cards, it's not in the cards. This is a business, and I have my people that I need to take care of, and that's my wife and my son, and we'll make the best decision possible. But there's no doubt that there's a lot of buzz out there when it comes to the fans, fantasy matchups and all that kind of stuff. So I just let the fans talk, and I let my fighting do the talking inside the cage.
I'm gonna give you some of the quotes that he said, because I thought it was interesting. You did touch on that one, so you've addressed that. He says, "I'm not sure where he'll end up, but we'll go back and look at the statistics of the gate, the type of fights he puts on, and the ratings, and see what type of formula we can put together to make him a good offer. But free agency works both ways. So just that part alone, can you address it? Have you ever looked at that data? You know, you mentioned 35,000 earlier. We know you have 15 finishes in your 20 wins. And by the way, I had to do a double take when the statistic shows, you know, your overall stats. And I think you had 20 or 23 fights with Bellator. I was like, wow. I mean, that really is a lot of fights. You hold a lot of their records. When you hear that, you know, the ratings and the arena, have you and your team already done that data? Do you feel like you're one of the fighters that's one of the reasons you deserve to be paid?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I you know, it's all relative, right? You know, maybe me stepping into the cage against, you know, Benson Henderson, or maybe me stepping in the cage against, you know, Sidney Outlaw, Brandon Gertz, these different guys that I've fought. You know, it does take two to tango. You got to have two guys. You got to have a guys that people want to see fight. And I've been on every single card that I've been on since honestly, since I won the title, has been the marquee fights of the year. Bellator started only doing two or three big shows a year and doing a lot of small shows. And they started doing, you know, 10 big shows a year, a tent pole, if you will, you know, those five or six really big tent pole ones, plus a couple of extra ones that, you know, now that we signed to deal with DAZN and all that kind of stuff. I've been on all the big cards. I've been on all the big platforms. I've been on all, you know, my name has been in the marquee as the co-main event or the main event. And even sometimes when I should have been the main event, and got bumped to the co-main event because of some of the fights that Bellator would be putting on, which I loved. You know, people criticize the Kimbo Slices and the Hoist Gracies and the Ken Shamrocks. People don't understand that they can say all they want, but they still tuned in, right? And that's really what I think that comment is. And you know, and Scott Coker is right in saying he's got to do. I just love that we have a relationship, and he and I could talk on the phone right now, and I could say, Scott, I truly want you to do the best thing that you need to do for your organization, for your business. And yeah, he said we got to go back and look at the stats. The stats speak for themselves. The stats, the performances, the tenacity, the ferocity that I bring to the cage compared to not just the Bellator roster, but the entire roster of mixed martial arts fighters out there in the game today. I bring a different type of tenacity. Win, lose, or draw. The majority of my wins do come by violent finish. And I rarely go to the judges' scorecards, and I'm always one of the marquee guys on one of the big cards. And I do put butts in seats, and I do have a large stable of deep-seated fan base that kind of looks at me like somewhat of that underground fighter, you know, that guy that people watch me specifically because they know I do it for the love of the game. They do it because I love inflicting harm on people. I love going out in there and getting into a fist fight. And, you know, he has made his comments, and I stand by, you know, my worth, and I know I go out there and I put on a great show, and he's the promoter. They are the promotion. It's their job to promote. So that does go both ways. You know, I can't be held accountable for numbers and butts and seats also 100% solely on my back. We have to have a promotion doing the promoters doing the promoting and the fighters doing the fighting. And I try to do my job. And I've always been available for constructive criticism. That's one thing that's different about me. I try to keep the ego out of it, and I will take the constructive criticism. If I need to do something more for you guys, you let me know. If I need to do less, you let me know. Because I do believe in order to be a great leader, you need to be a great subordinate. And you know, in order to be trusted with a lot, you need to be trusted with a little. Be able to be trusted with a little. So that's where I'm at, and you know, we'll see what the future holds.
Michael, let's talk a little bit about options here. Obviously, there's the UFC, there's One Championship, there's Rizin, there's PFL. There's a lot of them out there. But let's see some of the things that they have in common. If you look at the UFC, One Championship, Rizin, this is going to require you to travel outside of the U.S., which is a little bit more difficult now with what's going on. PFL would require you to be in a season. You know, that's a little bit of a different stretch from what you're used to. You did do that over at Bellator. But here at PFL, like you said, you're getting a little bit older. It's a different type of schedule. What are the things that you invite from these different types of organizations, things that stand out that you like? And then what are things that you may not be willing to do, like, say, travel?
I mean, I believe, I think seeing I remember, watching Demetrius Johnson, when they did the trade with Ben Askren, and when I hear him talk about, he had so much that he had already accomplished in the United States and defended that belt a million times or whatever he did. And he talked about going across the world and becoming not just a U.S. superstar, but a worldwide superstar. And, that's something to consider. Won championships. We've heard about their expansion coming to the United States. So that's always a great option. And that's always something great to see because at the end of the day too, we as fighters want options. There can't just be one big organization in town, and because that suppresses the wages for everybody. PFL has their seasons. You alluded to my age. I really can honestly say that, and knock on wood, but man, each year that goes by, I'm astounded as to how well my body is holding up. I've had 0 injuries. I've pulled out of 0 fights. I've now been in 25 fights, 25 training camps, actually more than 25 training camps, because I've had 2, 3, 4, 5 people pull out of fights. So I've gone through 30 different training camps and I've been injured 0 times. And knock on wood, I probably shouldn't be speaking that into, talking about that too much, but my body is durable. My athleticism and all of that kind of my athleticism, my speed, stamina, cardio, all of that is continuing to get better. If not just continuing to fire on the same cylinder, but my mind, my spirit, my ability to discern fights and scenarios, my fight IQ, with now over these last 5 or 6 years, realizing that I need to take extreme ownership of where I am and what I am and what goes into my mind and how I can watch fights and break them down and see different performances. But when it comes to seasons, or it comes to only fighting twice a year, 3 times a year, 5 times a year, whatever, I can make that decision with no holds barred. I can make that decision with the limits off, knowing that if I need to fight 5 times in 1 year, I can do it. If I only want to fight 1 time a year and have a big money fight, pay-per-view, this, that, and the other thing, I could do that as well. I don't know. It's just an interesting time, because I don't mean to sound, too flippant about it, but I really don't think there is a positive or a negative or a drawback. I think there's just a decision. I'm a firm believer that you make the best decision you can with the information that you have, and then you live with that decision. And that's what I've done, over my last 4 or 5 contracts with Bellator. And I've tried to be, the best fighter and the best employee that I possibly could. But obviously there's different levels of competition. There's different levels of media and eyeballs and size of the shows. And then there's the geographical component when you talk about ONE FC being over mainly in Asia. All I know is there's a lot of stuff to digest, but it usually becomes abundantly clear in the moment that it needs to be abundantly clear. And I'm believing that's going to happen this time.
I'll tell you what the fans say. When the fans look at your situation, the one thing that somebody will always point out is they'll say, won championships, got Eddie Alvarez, and they can always make that fight. Obviously, you can't make decisions now, but I'm going to ask this question this way. Deep down in your soul, do you feel like eventually, no matter where it takes place, you will probably fight Eddie Alvarez for a 3rd time at some point before you retire?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would like to say yes. I think that's the only one, because people talk about, do you want the fight back with Will Brooks? Do you want the fight back with Patricio? And those fights, those I guess people think I'm a revengeful person, and it makes sense. You lose a fight to somebody, and you want to get revenge, but I've never really been like that. I really look at it like the guy who's in front of me. The guy who's in front of me is just a nameless, faceless guy with 2 arms and 2 legs, and he's my size. I want to go out there and fight him. So, but that Eddie Alvarez fight, obviously, winning the first one, losing the second one by close split decision. The fact that Henry Hooft was his coach for that second one. Henry is now my coach. I like Eddie. I've had conversations with Eddie in passing and seeing him. And you can't fight a guy for 50 minutes inside a cage and not have a tremendous amount of respect for him. I respect him as a man, as a father, as a husband, as a competitor. He's given me more scars on my face and probably internally than anybody else has in my entire career. And, we were scheduled to fight that third time and he got injured and had to, pull out and pivot. So, that's a fight that I would like to have back. Or it's a fight that I would like to get scheduled again. Does it necessarily need to happen in ONE FC? And do I have to go sign with ONE FC for it to happen? No. I think, UFC trades. You're seeing Bellator co-promote with Risen. You're seeing all kinds of different things that we never thought would have been possible just a couple of years ago. So, Chris Cyborg just came out the other day talking about cross promotions and Bellator versus UFC. And, is it realistic? Probably not. But man, all bets are off these days. This is a sport where we want to keep on growing, want to keep on building. We want to keep on moving with the times and changing with the times. But that fight with Eddie Alvarez, I would love for the trilogy to happen. But as I said too, it doesn't have to happen under ONE FC. Don't be naive to think that we couldn't do a cross promotion with Bellator and ONE FC, or even Eddie end up out of his contract and end up back in Bellator and fight me. I mean, who knows? All I'm saying is anything can happen. So,
Chandler, I got a question for you here in regards to some names you brought up. So, Cyborg, Mustasi, Bader, they all came over from the UFC. Some of them came with bitter feelings. Others just made a professional decision. Have you ever had a chance to pick their brain? And Bader's a stablemate of yours, I think, when it comes to management. And then at the same time, you brought up Askren, and so I know Askren, you and Woodley are tight. You're the Missouri crew. Michael Johnson's a teammate of yours, who you've trained with for many camps, who's in your weight class. Is it as simple as if you pick their brain to see, are they saying, come over here, dog, UFC's where it's at? And then on the flip side, are the others telling you, hey, man, the grass isn't greener on the other side? Have you leaned on them?
Yeah, I've had my conversations, and I don't want to get into the conversations or into who said what or whatnot, but everybody's got their opinions. Michael Johnson can glean a lot from me because I'm the only guy that he knows who's been with Bellator for 10 years. Ben Askren can or Tyron Woodley could glean a lot from me because I'm the only guy that he knows who's been with Bellator for 10 years, and vice versa. Tyron's been a champion over there, and now he's not a champion. And a guy like Michael Johnson, who essentially he and I are the same age. We wrestled each other in high school, for crying out loud. And then he goes the Ultimate Fighter route, and he's been in the UFC for a really long time. And, and Bader, Bader and I are very similar. He and I are both similar fighting styles and wrestlers and whatnot. And we've had conversations as well. But, I could tell you this, there's pros and cons to all of the organizations. There are pros and cons to every single business decision that you can make out there. And I have my yellow legal pad right here that's got a little bit of stuff about, making the right decisions for my fight career, making the right decisions for, with my management, with this, with that. And I'm a very big student of the game. And I don't ever try to fish for information from people to just get my own gain. I actually like to get into a conversation with people, and I like to be subjective and objective about my conversations. And because I am not so naive to understand that just because the fans want to see me fight this guy, that guy, or the next guy, or just because the fans think I should stay with Bellator because of, hey, it'd be cool to see you stay with Bellator because you'd be the only guy who stayed with the Bellator your whole career type of thing, like a Chuck Liddell did with the UFC or any one of those names. It's hard because as I've said too, I met you guys 10 years ago in Vegas, and I was just a no-name kid who was coming up, and I told you I was going to win the Bellator tournament and then win, beat Eddie Alvarez, and you guys, were kind of like, wow, what the heck? Who's this guy think he is? But man, Randall, my manager, was like, very high on me, and then all that stuff came to fruition, and now we've gotten built a great relationship, and things have changed also too. I'm still that fiery competitor, that fiery kid who wants to go out there and inflict bodily harm and doing it in a dominant, exciting, entertaining fashion. But I also have to be more cerebral about my decisions as well, based on, having a wife and a son and hopefully more kids on the way here in the next, future years. And, so I've had those conversations, and it is always good for the fighters to stick together in certain regards and be honest with each other about, how the pay structures work, or how contracts read, or, hey, this organization treated me this way and this organization treated me that way. And so there's a lot of information out there if you want to go get it. And I have gotten some great information, but truthfully, the decision rests solely on my shoulders, and me making the best decision for myself and my family. And I think I'm going to do that. Or Bellator makes that decision for me, and they make it pretty easy for me. So we will see.
Michael, I want to be mindful of your time. I think you have a workout coming on, but I still got more questions. Should we do a part 2 in a few days or something like that? Or are you still good to go? You tell me.
I'm good, man. Let's go.
All right. What's on your pie chart? By that, I mean, when you look at those presentations that are done, in business, where they'll show these graphs, and trying to keep it simple here, but you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
You had your list there. I have one too with the questions I want to ask Michael Chandler, but fans probably want to know what basically is going to drive this decision. There's going to probably be money, we'll say. There's going to be promotion loyalty, maybe. There's going to be, do I vibe with the promoter? Does the strength of the division I'm in, do I like it, at this promotion or whatever? So what's on your pie chart? What's the criteria that must be met, or come closest to being met, or tick the most boxes to guide you in the direction, because let's just say they all pay you the same. Then what? You got a secondary decision to make. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's a good, it's a phenomenal question, because it is interesting too, because, obviously you guys see the negative comments or the unsolicited advice or comments from the fans all the time. Oh, he doesn't, he talks about free agency last time and then ended up not going to the UFC because of, he's afraid of the competition, or he's afraid of USADA, or he's afraid of this, that, and the other thing, or blah, blah, blah. So of course the fans see it from their view. And so I think it's incumbent upon us, or imperative for us to let the fans know that, hey, this isn't just about competition. If this was just about competition, first of all, from a promoter standpoint, the best fighter in the world will be fighting each other, but they're not. The guys who make the most noise, and the guys who sell the most, or put the most butts in seats and the most eyeballs, those are the guys that are going to fight each other. Same on the same token for the actual fighter. It's not just about the competition. If it was just about the competition, you're going to see us get our heads beat in for a decade and then not have any money or anything to show for it. We're going to be, teaching kids jiu-jitsu, drooling on ourselves, by year 10, if we don't focus on making the right decisions, making the right business decisions, and trying to make the best living that we can for our families. So for me, I mean, obviously, yes, this is a business. I am a prize fighter. I'd be kind of silly to only think about the fighting and not the prize part. So it's got to be a prize, a salary, a money per fight that is, that is fitting of a guy of my caliber, a guy of my tenure, and a guy of my abilities and my entertainment factor. And I'm not saying that's huge. I'm not saying I'm the most entertaining guy in the world. I'm not saying I'm worth $1 billion a fight. I'm just saying the money has to fit the performance side of things. And then from there, yeah, I mean, it's thinking about the competition. It's thinking about what does the promoters and the promotion stand for, and what do they continue? What does the future look like? Right now we're in the middle of a coronavirus. You got Dana White trying to throw fights on Fight Island and different places. And then you got, Scott Coker and the Bellator crew also making decisions from what I've talked to. They're making, decisions based upon their business model and what they have going on. But you've seen Bellator do nothing but grow. Not exactly in the lightweight division. We haven't really signed a ton of guys in my division, but you look at the 205 division, you look at some of these heavyweights, you look at the tournaments, you look at the featherweight tournament. Bellator is doing nothing but growing. Bellator is doing nothing but expanding worldwide. If it wasn't for this pandemic, they would have had a show in Ireland and London, I believe, in last month or so. And so Bellator is doing nothing but growing. The UFC is doing nothing but growing. ONE FC has, based on all the stuff that Eddie has talked about in the media, Sage Northcutt, Demetrius Johnson, these guys are, they have deep pockets and those guys are, getting paid well. So it's just interesting. But obviously we haven't had a conversation with ONE FC. We haven't had a conversation with the UFC. We don't have these conversations. I think a lot of people are under the impression that, my manager is going to talk to these other promotions, and we're not. We are men of character. We are men of contractually binding obligations, and my contractual obligation is to be a Bellator fighter and nothing but a Bellator fighter, and talk to no other promotion besides Bellator for the length of time in which I'm under contract. So, so prize fighter, the prize, and where I believe my skills match up compared to the depth of the rosters and all the different exciting matchups that could be in my future.
Last question. When I had to look up just how many were confirmed that you had 22 Bellator fights, because again, it feels like a blur. You just said it, man. You and Randall walked into our studio 10 years ago, and Gil Martinez, Randall are whispering in my ear, this is the next big guy, and I'm like rubbing the top of their heads going, yeah, I've heard this before, And sure enough, you deliver. But anyway, 22 fights later, as I'm looking at the record, I realized, holy cow, you were in Strikeforce at one time. How did I forget that? You ever joke around with Scott Coker and go, you let me go once, don't fuck up again? And, you ever joke with him? You said you have a good relationship with him, right?
Yeah, I do. And it is funny because I always talked about how it all came full circle. I fought essentially, and Tyron Woodley, who I actually talked to this morning and talked to him a week or so ago, he got me those. I had 3 fights before I signed my Bellator contract. And the first one was in Lake of the Ozarks, Missouri, in front of like 17 people at a Holiday Inn Express or something. And then I got on his card in St. Louis and I got on his card in Kansas City, both Strikeforce cards when he was fighting for Strikeforce. So he got me those fights. And yeah, so the crazy thing is I have been fighting I had one small pro fight under a small promotion, and then I've had every single one of my other fights was Strikeforce or Bellator, which is kind of crazy. So out of my 25 fights, 24 of those have been with a major organization. Now, granted, the first 2 were Strikeforce. I was the local guy selling the tickets, but it is pretty crazy because you see some of these guys. I was looking up, 1 or 2 of the guys in the lightweight division right now who, you just look at you see where guys came from, because all of a sudden guys come out of nowhere and then they go from nobodies to all of a sudden their name, and then they have one fight and then they become a name. And you look at these guys and guys that got 10, 15 fights in these small promotions. Look at a guy like Conor McGregor, who obviously is across the pond. He's not an American fighter, but everybody talks about the Cage Warriors, and it's like, well, who cares about the Cage Warriors championships or whatnot? But he always touted it, which is kind of cool, which I actually, tip my hat to him because he holding it down for the European promotions. But I've fought 24 out of my 25 fights under one of the 2 major banners in the entire world. So that's cool. And yeah, it is interesting. And as I said, Scott Coker and I are friends. I feel like we have a relationship where, and I want it to be clear too. I'm not on a free agency campaign right now. I'm not on a free agency interview campaign right now. Obviously, it doesn't even really enter my mind whenever, like, even when you asked about this interview, it wasn't even like, oh, we're going to talk about free agency the whole time. For instance, the other day, one of the Bellator PR people said, hey, Bellator MMA Recharged is airing this weekend. Your fight with Goiti Yamauchi is going to be on. CBS Sports Network wants to interview you. And I said, okay, that sounds good. Yeah, I'd love to pump up Bellator. I'd love to pump up the fact that we're doing a show on CBS Sports where they're going to show some of the old Bellator fights, which is awesome. Getting our fights on CBS, the networks. And he asked me one question about Bellator Recharged, and then next question was free agency. The next question after that was free agency, and then free agency, free agency, free agency. And then would you ever like to fight Patricio Pitbull again? And or would you ever like to, but that was only after he asked me if I wanted to fight Eddie Alvarez again. So I wanted to be clear that sometimes I am just a product of the media understanding that free agency is a lot bigger hot button issue than my next fight, or and it's cool. Like with you guys, I actually enjoy like when Goes is asking about, hey, all these different promotions, the seasons of PFL or the Asian market of ONE FC, and then blah blah blah, and you asking about the pie chart, give the fans an insight, because I think it's important to give the fans an insight to how we make these decisions. And, if I can add value to a young fighter who's thinking about free agency or thinking about signing with a certain promotion, that's what I want to do as well. But, sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent there, but I'm not on a free agency political campaign here trying to wave my flag and all that kind of stuff. It just gets brought up.
Dude, I'm kind of giggling here because you're so right. Like, literally what happened the other day was Bellator the 244 card was canceled in Chicago, you versus Benson. So I see your name there, and the only thing I thought was, we haven't caught up with Chandler in a while. I wonder how he's holding up with the pandemic. I follow you on social media, and I see you doing things, but it's different from hearing it from somebody. So wanted to get those thoughts. I also knew that free agency was coming up, and then all of a sudden, in between you and I, because you took like a day to get back to me or so, and then by the time we settled on the next day, Coker does that interview, and it's like, well, we're idiots if we don't bring that up, but you're right. It almost sounds like Goes and I pulled off a free agency ambush, and that wasn't even the case. The case was like, man, hey, buddy, that sucks that your fight fell through. How are you with your family? That type of thing. And here we are. So when you were talking about CBS, I was like, holy cow, we pulled a CBS.
Yeah, well, no, it's fine, and but it's it's the nature of the game, and this is. I always never understood when guys would complain about doing interviews and complain about, I got to go talk to this guy. I got to talk to that. And I'm like, man, do you understand that someday, I hope that you guys and I are friends, forever. But like, there's going to come a time where y'all ain't calling me about my fights and ain't calling me about my fight career because I ain't going to have a fight career, or my fight career is going to go downhill and it's over. So I always just wondered, man, when I was like, man, you guys get to do this. You get to speak to people to let your voice be heard around the world through awesome outlets like MMA Junkie and all these other ones. So, it's part of the game, and it's part not of the game as in like a game. It's part of the atmosphere of mixed martial arts, if you will. And it's interesting because your text message was like, hey, we haven't caught up in a while. And then now and then Scott Coker's interview comes out, and then now it's like, well, that was the thing to talk about today. And CBS Sports did do that to me, which was interesting because Viacom and CBS are together. So it's almost like you would think that and I will say, I thought I was doing the interview on behalf of Bellator with a Bellator media outlet. Therefore, free agency wouldn't even be brought up. But 90% of the questions were about free agency. So it's interesting, but it's part of it, man. And it's an interesting time. And as I've said, it's, we will see. And like I said, man, next time we talk, I could be a lifetime Bellator fighter, or we could be talking and I could be, heading out to Vegas to do other things.
By the way, real quick, does this fight have to happen before the contract ends, or is there a date where, let's say, the pandemic stretches things out? Because June 6th was canceled. Then there was rumors of sometime in June, but then Scott did say now they're looking at July.
So they are okay. Yeah, I didn't hear they're looking at July.
He did say that. I can give you exactly what he said, but I know he mentioned that month.
Okay.
So he didn't say July 1. He also didn't say July 31.
Yeah. To be honest with you, I don't feel at liberty. I don't feel at liberty to let you know exactly when or how kind of that works. I will say, yes, there's one fight left on my contract. Obviously, this pandemic changes things for everybody's contracts. I can't hold a promoter liable for the whole world shutting down either. So, I have, number one, I've never looked at, I've never been the guy who's going to hold the fine print against Bellator. I've been a guy who has, made concessions on contracts before, and they have been an organization that has stood firm on concessions or on contract language, but also, you know, we've found some good middle ground. So, you know, this fight needs to happen, I believe, and I hope it's Benson Henderson, a healthy Benson Henderson, and you know, we shall see, man. I'm excited about the future.
Hey, those 17 people that were at the Ozark fight, was it Marty Byrne, his family, the KC mob, Charlotte, or Ruth and Wyatt? Who was there?
Basically. No, actually, no, it was more than 17, but I actually had there's a wrestling family who I wrestled with, the Watercuddies, and Rick Watercuddy married into the Pepper family. There was like the Watercuddy Pepper Cuddies that we called them. There was like 50 of them. I think they brought like their whole family. So there was more than 17. But you know, it was great. It was at a small little ballroom at some Holiday Inn in the middle of nowhere. We ate. I'll never forget. It was like the funniest. It's like one of the best memories of my life. Tyron took me to Denny's, and I had like a Grand Slam breakfast after weigh-ins and stuff. Mark Bader, who at the time was doing the Pure Flow Wrestling. Flow Wrestling used to be called Pure Fight or something like that. He did an interview, and I was just some young kid, not even knowing what the heck was going on. And before I knew it, a year later, I was sitting at the MMA Junkie Radio studio telling you guys I was going to be a world champ, and I didn't really believe it myself, and made it happen, and here we are.
That's awesome, man. Good stuff. We covered a lot. Thanks for the time. I really, really appreciate it. First things first, like you said, let's get through this pandemic, and then dominoes will fall in so many directions. MMA is it's a sport we love. It's a sport that provides for us, but really it's just a small blip on the big radar of this planet, you know, and us getting through this, and us and our loved ones getting through this alive. So our best to you and your family, your immediate family, you know, everybody that you care about. I know you've met some of ours as well, and they're doing well. So again, you know, God bless you and everybody that's close to you.
You got it, brother. I appreciate you guys. God bless you.